Hello and welcome to my quick demo video for a new plugin I created called the One Head Four Butts plugin. And as you can see, the reason I named it One Head Four Butts is because on the surface it looks like it has just a simple menu of one header image and then four buttons to select. And honestly, when I first started off creating this plugin, that's all I wanted. I wanted four buttons that I could set up quickly and four buttons that, more importantly, would look good whether I was looking at it landscape or portrait. With the existing button plugin, if you had four buttons set up like this and you rotated the iPad, then you'd end up with three buttons across the top and one button at the bottom, and it was just never looked right. So that's what I started making, and as I kept on creating it, I just kept on putting more and more features into it until I ended up with this monster of a plugin now, over 1,000 lines of pure Xcode goodness, highly optimized hopefully, and lots of features. So I'm going to show off a couple of features in this video. So starting off with just this standard look, this is what it would look like on the iPad. The iPhone would look exactly the same, one header image and then four buttons. And the difference with the iPad version or large device version is that when you rotate it, there is actually two different header images. If you look, I've got this one that's named header portrait, and when I rotate, you'll see that it says header landscape, and I did that so that all the buttons would fit perfectly and they'd stay spaced the same and everything would look the same. So another thing I wanted to point out is that the buttons that I'm using, these sample buttons that I'm using in this video, they are all just plain Jane square buttons or rectangle buttons, and you could obviously use transparent pings and have any kind of shape that you wanted. You could round the corners, just as long as you be careful when you use rounded corners and don't upset Apple, getting too close to looking like an app screen. But you can do a whole lot of stuff with those buttons. I just showed you here the full size of the image location that you can use for the buttons. You could even get real fancy and use a background image that had maybe almost like a map type, if you're familiar with the HTML mapping, where you can map out different locations, and you could have transparent pings, just completely empty pings for the four button positions, and you could make a nice big picture that showed something else and use those as the buttons, hidden buttons. So that's what it looks like from the start, but there's really 8 buttons here, and I'm only showing 4 at a time. So I'm going to show you how to configure this plugin to look different depending on how you want it to look. So we're going to look at, these are obviously buttons 1 through 4. I'm going to switch to a different screen that's showing buttons 5, 6, 7, and 8. So these 4 buttons here were hidden on the other screen, and on this screen I've hidden 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I'm showing you 5, 6, 7, and 8. So these are just rectangle buttons. Again, you could use a rounded rectangle or a pill-shaped button if you wanted to make it look nice. And again, just a quick and easy, if you only have 4 items or less than 4 items on a screen that you want to make a quick menu with, and you don't want to deal with child items and configuring up the font size and everything, then you just throw a couple images in here and show them. Now, switching between these two looks, the square buttons and the rectangle buttons, is done in the control panel. And if you look, this is the demo app that I'm showing you. And the demo app, I'm using nothing but this One Head Four Butts plugin. And if we look at, let's say, the home screen here that we're looking at right now, I've got a header image properties where I can put in the picture for the iPhone header, the iPad portrait header like we're looking at right here, and then the landscape header size, and all the sizes are here for your image creating software for Photoshop or whatever you use. And then of course we can hide the header image also. If I wanted just buttons and no header, then I can do that as well. It still uses all the same properties as any other plugin where you can make a background image or background color. I'm just showing you a flat background color on this example to keep it easy. So once you set up the header image, you'll notice that I did take out the header image URL options. I did have it in before, but just in my testing and stuff, it worked better, the performance was better, and the user experience was better. I guess that's the more important part. to keep these files compiled into the project as opposed to using URLs. Part of the process of rotating, switching between the two different header images, all these buttons stay the same when you rotate the images behind the buttons, but the header image does switch, and having a URL just didn't look right, so I took that option out. So with the button images, you can use URLs for any of those, and you'll see that in just a second. But for the header images, I'm kind of forcing you to compile them in. But if anybody ever needs to use URLs, I can always show you how to put that back in. So if we look down at the button properties, it's going to be a big window here because there's 8 buttons. And you can see all these 8 buttons listed out, and each one of them has a show this button option. So in this case right here, this home menu where I'm showing buttons 1, 2, 3, and 4, you'll see that the show this button is selected for yes for 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then it's selected no for 5, 6, 7, 8. Now you could actually have all 8 showing if you wanted to. I'm going to go ahead and show number 5 there and save that and refresh the screen real quick. But there's probably no chance that you'd ever want to do that because they're going to overlap a little bit. Oh, I didn't put an image name in. Stand by. This is all part of doing this live. I'll edit this out later. And hit save. And now when I refresh, you see that button 5 will show up on top of the other buttons. Probably not something that you want to do. So we're going to go ahead and hide that button again. And then refresh. So we've got 4 buttons here. We've got the other 4 buttons here. Each of them have the same properties as far as what kind of screen they're going to load, button image names for both small and large devices, URLs for small and large devices, and so far pretty simple. Let me show you some more of the more advanced stuff. As I go back to my home screen, I'm going to show you that each of the buttons have different animations. You'll see that I've got an animation type selected here, and I've got different animation types or similar animation types depending on if it's a square button menus, the 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then the 5, 6, 7, 8 have similar but different ones. So let me step you through the different animation types here. You can obviously select none. We can have rotate, fly left, fly right, or animate buttons 1 through 4. So I've got each one of these showing something different. I'll show you button 1 first. That's going to be the animate 1, 4. So if I show you that again, you see that they fly out, and the next page that it loads is just going to fade in. If we look at button number 2, I've got that set to rotate. So it rotated that button real quick, and then it went off to the next page. Button 3, I've got a simple fly out left. Button 4, I've got a fly out right. I don't have those attached to any screen to load, so it would have transitioned to another screen. But I just have those fly out to show you. So 4 different animation types listed in buttons 1 through 4, and then once that animation stops, then it loads whatever screen is loaded. For the rectangle buttons, I've got similar but different animations. So if we look down here in the menu under button 5, you'll see that there's a fly left, a fly right. Those are going to do the same things that they did before. And then I've got 3 different animate for buttons if you have all 5 or all 4 buttons 5 through 8. I've got animate out, animate left, and animate down. So let me show you those. Button 5 here, that's going to be an animate out. It just brings all 5 of them out. And depending on which one you click, the one that you click is going to go out first. You notice I clicked 5 and it starts out first. If I clicked out 6, if that 6 was set up, then it would fly out first, and then 5, and then 8, and then 7. And I just did that, reordered how they fly out so it looks good. Button 6 I've got set up to an animate down. So all 4 leave the screen down, and then it transitions. And I put these animations in here because Apple doesn't like full screen transitions on the iPad. And if I didn't put any animation, then it would look like a full screen animation. Now, the view controller is still animating full screen, but this is just a way to kind of trick, I guess, trick the eye into thinking that the whole screen and all of its elements are animating since we're making them leave first. And of course, these are all optional. You can always select none for these for these animations. Button 7 is going to be an animate all 4 buttons to the left, so they leave, and that one looks pretty neat when you transition that into the next screen, which again I don't have button 7 or 8 set to anything, and button 8 is just going to be a fly out right. You can do that same thing to the left also. So those are some of the animations for the buttons, and there's also transition types for each of these. For this demo I've been using fade for most everything, but you can see all the normal ones: fade, flip, curl, grow. I would suggest against using something like the grow or the flip for the full screen transitions on iPad, just because I think Apple would probably object to that. But play around with them, find out ones that you like, and test them out. So the next little demo I'm going to show you is just round buttons, and this is just showing a screen that I've used round buttons instead of squares. Same 4 buttons. I've hidden the header on this one, and it just looks very clean. Now I've got some transitions on these. The rotate that I showed you before here on buttons 1 through 4, it looks kind of weird with a square button, but with the circle button, you can see that it actually looks kind of neat. Just a nifty little animation. A couple of the tricks that you can do with this plugin. One is, any of these, of course I've showed you 4 buttons at a time. We can take any of these and hide out certain ones. So let me show you an example of that. If I go to my screen that was 5, 6, 7, 8, the 4 rectangles, and I go into the button properties, and let's hide button 7 and 6 and 5. Let's save that and refresh. So now the only button I have showing should be number 8 when I go to that screen. And then I could even go and hide the header on this one. Let's go back and refresh. And now you can see you could have some kind of a background image, a huge background image with just one button. If you just need some kind of an OK button, or a yes or an I agree type button, or just something to transition to the next screen. You can see in my screenshot here, the sample that I used was just one of my background images for another app that I've made, and just the generic button 8 there. So you can see that you can put any kind of rounded rectangle or a nice pill-shaped button or something like that there, and it would be a nice, even a splash screen maybe, just a splash screen that you can put at the beginning of your app, one that doesn't time out automatically, one that you're forcing them to click an OK button or something. You could do the same thing with button 7 and button 8, have 2 buttons here with maybe like a yes and a no type thing, that depending on what they clicked, it would go to a different part of your app. Just different things that you can do. Another thing that you could do is have, I think in one of these, nope. In these examples, I'm showing a combination of buttons where I've got button 1, 2, 7, and 8 showing, where I've hidden 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. Or you could do the opposite and show the rectangles on the top and then the squares on the bottom. Just different ways to configure this. You could have 5 and 8 and nothing in the middle. All different ways of configuring up this. And with all of these configurations, no matter how you rotate, the buttons are going to stay spaced the same, and it's just going to look right. All of these same screens work if it was a tabbed app. It doesn't mess with the buttons in any way. The tabs show up down at the bottom here, and everything's still visible. Everything rotates fine, which is another pain in the butt sometimes, having a tabbed app that rotates differently than a non-tabbed app. So that's some of the features. Now in the plugin that you download, it's going to include, if I look in Xcode here, all of the sample buttons, so that as a default, if you just add a screen in, and I'll show you that real quick. Let's go back here, and I'll just add another screen in. It's going to default to showing buttons 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the button properties, and these button image names are already going to be set in here. So if I added this screen somewhere into my menu and I didn't do anything, it would default to having the buttons, the 4 buttons showing 1, 2, 3, and 4, and there will already be buttons there. I put that in so that as you're starting to create your app and you want to add these menus in, then you already have buttons showing, and then you can go ahead and mock up your app and connect all the screens together and do all the fun stuff, getting all the screens put together and make the app actually work. And then later on you can go back and actually create your buttons. So you can actually go into Photoshop and replace these buttons out. So you can either change these image names and then put in your own image names that you created, or you can just write over these, delete them out of your app, and then write in new ones with the same button names, and you won't have to change anything in your control panel. So in the plugin, it's going to include all of these buttons, and that's really, like I said, for just mocking up and quickly creating menus like I did here for this demo. And then once you're ready to compile for your final project, if you're not using these generic buttons, which I hope you aren't, then you would go ahead and delete those out of your project and everything would be good. So hopefully that gives a good demonstration of everything that this plugin can do. I'm pretty happy with it, pretty excited about it, and it makes throwing together some quick menus pretty easy, and at the same time you can really make some pretty impressive looking menus that are highly customizable. So thank you for watching.